On today's Locked On Thunder podcast, we're diving into the Oklahoma City Thunder getting a professional win against the Utah Jazz. What this game means for Oklahoma City as they stop their two-game losing streak. Cason Wallace steps up, J-Dub looks like a star, and more.
You are Locked On Thunder, your daily Oklahoma City Thunder podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Let's get it going on the Locked On Podcast Network. It's the Locked On Thunder podcast. Here today, I am your host, media member, editor-in-chief over at thunderousintentions.com, Rylan Stiles. Follow me on Twitter at Rylan_Stiles. Follow the show on Twitter at LOThunderPod. Email the show, LOThunderPod@gmail.com. On today's show, we're diving into the Thunder's professional win over the Utah Jazz. Cason Wallace steps up, J-Dub shines, and Josh Giddey looks improved. This episode is brought to you by our good friends over at PrizePicks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedInNBA. Use code all lowercase LockedInNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. Folks, in this game, the Thunder missed Lou Dort. He was out with an illness. Cason Wallace had to be thrusted into the starting lineup, had a career night. And the Utah Jazz, who are red hot, 9-1 last 10 games, they came in only missing G League assignment players, a fantastic home record. And the Thunder were able to stop a two-game losing streak. And the Thunder have never had a losing streak longer than 2 this season. And this was a spot where it easily could have spiraled. You lose to the Lakers, you lose to the Clippers in that LA back-to-back. The Clippers game, the Clippers were just shooting the ball extremely well, playing really good basketball. Both teams played really well, but some team had to lose. But now, you're on a 0-2 streak. SGA didn't quite look right in LA, so there's a little concern about that. Utah is playing fantastic basketball. Minnesota to end the road trip is a very tough matchup for Oklahoma City. Then you start to begin to wonder if this could spiral into an 0-4 stretch, which most teams face every year. But the Thunder came out in this game on fire, and they really set the tone, as they have when they face these sort of questions this entire season. They got to the rim very well. They looked quicker than they had in the past few games. And they eventually grew a 19-point lead right out of the gate. And that lead did dwindle. Basketball is a game of runs. But still, the Thunder had 0 lead changes. They controlled this game wire to wire. Only 2 ties. And there were a few reasons why I think that this game was a professional win for Oklahoma City. Not only did they stave off the Jazz runs, and even when the Jazz tied it up twice, they never relinquished the lead. But the Jazz came into this game as the best rebounding team in the NBA. The Thunder, one of the worst rebounding teams in the NBA. And yet, on the glass, they both finish with 38 rebounds. The Thunder even turned the ball over one more time than Utah. But the 38 rebounds, and the Jazz went to their zone defense. And OKC just looked more prepared for it. They were more decisive. They were making better decisions with the basketball. They were skipping the ball around the perimeter, and they were finding the soft spot in the Jazz zone. Now, of course, it was not perfect, but by no means was it as bogged down as it typically looks for OKC when the other team goes to a zone. The Thunder won points in the paint by 2. They dominate fast break points 29-13. And Utah still, despite having even rebounding numbers, dominated second chance points. But the Thunder shot 55, 43, 85. Utah shot 48, 40, 83. That's a really good shooting split for Utah whenever you consider the slow start for the Jazz in this game. But after Utah settled in, they still could not overcome the Oklahoma City Thunder. It was a great response to each run. The Jazz had many of them. One of them was an 8-0 run with under a minute in the game gone by, right? So it was an 8-0 run, in the span of like 50 seconds of the course of this game. But the Thunder just overall showed their selfless passing nature, their constant movement, and their cuts that free up others. Like their cuts, of course, if you hit the cutter, it's going to be a fantastic, easy shot, easy bucket. But sometimes, the cutter is just a dummy action to get an open 3 in the corner, to get, a different action for OKC. And that's where they were able to capitalize and really hurt the defense. This was just a complete game. Good teams do this. Like, good teams go in on the road. They set the tone early. then they just sit there and nurse the lead and react and combat the biggest runs from the other team. So if the Thunder can have a constant level of effort on the glass, if they can get out and run in transition and dominate there, and then if they do this where everyone truly contributes, and the Thunder were up 7 points whenever SGA returns to this game in the final 5 minutes. Now, clearly, the final 5 minutes were still exhilarating, and we're still, nip and tuck, so to say. But in general, the last month, the Thunder have done a fantastic job of growing leads and throwing haymakers, as we said, whenever SG is on the bench in the fourth quarter to start things out. And if you can consistently do that, if you can consistently say the Thunder will be up 2-3 possessions or more when SGA returns, and all he has to do is close out the last 5 minutes, you're going to feel really good about that. You're going to feel really good about turning over the reins to an MVP caliber player with that kind of lead late in NBA games, who can hit the balls so well at the free throw line, hit the shots at the free throw line so well. You're going to feel good about that. And the Thunder should feel good about this win. Like yes, the Jazz right now are a 22-21 team, but thinking about their start and thinking about where they're at now, like they've been impressive this year to even get back to this point where they're the 9th seed in the West. That was a good Jazz team. That is a decisive home court advantage. Not only is the crowd into it, but the altitude, the third leg of a 4-game, of a 4-game road trip. And now you head into Minnesota and you have a chance against a team that is very, very tough, and a team that it's a tough matchup for Oklahoma City specifically, but you have a chance to salvage a road trip and go 500 on the road. And then you head back home for one quick one against Portland, which should be a very, very easy win. But you know what happens whenever you assume. And away you go. You're back on track at that point from that 2-game losing streak against the LA teams. So this was a professional win, one that the Thunder needed because it easily could have went the other way. And it just continues to show what this young team is made of, what this young team is able to accomplish. We'll talk about Cason Wallace stepping up. We'll talk about J-Dub and more coming up. But first, I want to tell you right now about our good friends over at eBay Motors. Check it out today at eBay Motors, folks, because eBay Motors is teaming up with Locked On Fantasy Basketball host Josh Lloyd, and they're going to bring you the best fantasy picks each week all season long. So no matter if you are prepping for a daily draft or scouting the waiver wire, every week you're going to be provided with the players that are guaranteed to fit your roster, just like eBay Motors is guaranteed to fit your ride. So let's see who Josh Lloyd has picked for this week's eBay Motors Guaranteed Fit Fantasy Player of the Week. You have a lot to choose from: Gigi Jackson, Mason Plumlee, Aaron Nesmith, Jabari Walker, Marvin Bagley III. But I'm going to go with Gigi Jackson. Memphis, of course, is dealing with a plethora of injuries. They are just decimated by them. They just need players. They just need minutes, right? And Gigi Jackson was an interesting draft prospect, and he's been figuring it out in the G League, and now he's going to get opportunity in the NBA. And he's shown flashes. He can be a shot creator that Memphis needs. And I think that in fantasy, you don't necessarily care about overall efficiency. You care more than that about the raw numbers. And I think that Gigi Jackson can put up raw numbers against Memphis, with Memphis, I should say, because of all their injuries and because of what they're looking at. Someone has to score. Somebody has to get assists. Somebody has to get rebounds. Those things are just going to happen still for Memphis, even if they're going to lose a ton of games and be bad after these injuries. So I think that with OKC, with your fantasy pick of the week, you can see them use Gigi Jackson in your fantasy lineup to really take you to the next level. Josh Lloyd of Locked On Fantasy Basketball is here to help you with your fantasy championship, and eBay Motors is here to help you win a championship with your ride because it can keep it alive. So make sure that you go there and find the perfect fit with your fantasy team and also with your vehicle. So check it out today at eBay Motors. And when you do, you can go and check out eBay Motors to find out how to keep your ride or die alive. I love eBay Motors because I don't know anything about cars. I don't know a single thing about cars, but I don't have to. I just have to know my make, my model, my year. And when I do that, then boom, they're going to tell me all the parts that will fit into my car. So I'm not guessing or having to make returns or anything like that. With over 122 parts to choose from, your number one ride or die can stay alive and running smoothly, from brake kits to LED lights to roof racks, bumpers, whatever your baby needs. Check it out today. eBay Motors has it. It's the eBay Guaranteed Fit. It's guaranteed to fit your ride the first time, every time, or your money back. Plus, at these prices, you're going to be burning rubber, not cash. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. eBay Guaranteed Fit, available to U.S. customers, eligible items only, and exclusions do apply. We're back on the Locked On Thunder podcast, on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you so much for making us your first listen every single morning, every single day. We're here for you, talking Thunder basketball. J-Dub looked like a star against the Utah Jazz. And I think that J-Dub flat out, Jalen Williams is an NBA All-Star caliber player. Right now, today, Jalen Williams is an All-Star caliber player. Now, we can talk about the politics of the All-Star game with the fan voting, but also just with, like, in general, it's very rare that you see a team get multiple, especially 3 All-Stars. And that's what this Thunder team is going to be staring down for the foreseeable future if all these guys continue to play this way, where there's going to be 3 guys that are worthy of an All-Star appearance. They're likely only going to get 2 unless they have just some jaw-dropping record. So, we can debate whether J-Dub will make an All-Star team in the near future. He obviously will not make this year's All-Star team, I don't think, but next year or whatever, we'll talk about that later. But in terms of how he's playing basketball, he is playing basketball like an All-Star. He is playing basketball at that level because he can defend, play the passing lanes, and get steals and run transition. He can throw that lob past the Chet, navigate the pick and roll as a facilitator, hit these pull-up mid-range shots. I mean, in this game, he took a heat check 3 against 2 defenders, nails it. Huge momentum shifter on the road. OKC goes up 113-102 into the timeout. And so we mentioned that when Utah makes these runs, the Thunder have answers. A lot of those answers, came from J-Dub. A lot of those answers came from what he was able to do. And he's one of those guys that help you in these moments, help you shift the energy, shift the momentum. That's why it's so tough to win on the road, because you got 18 guys who will bring energy and bring momentum. The opposite team has thousands of people bringing the momentum and energy for them. So you've got to create that from within. And there's automatically going to be some of those 18 guys that that's not their style. Their style is not to play with a ton of emotion on their sleeve and passion. But it certainly is J-Dub's style. And J-Dub is a desperate need. This team is in desperate need of J-Dub's fantastic energy and kind of just vibes that he brings, along with his fantastic all-star level play. After that Utah run, hits a 3, gets an assist to Cason for 3, OKC's back up double digits. He finishes this game with 27 points, 3 boards, 8 assists, 2 steals, 2 blocks. And he just has so many ways to kill you. And as you describe J-Dub's game, it sounds eerily similar to another player on the Thunder roster. So a few things that he's able to do at an elite level. He is elite at playing off the catch because, with the way he's shooting the ball at the 3-point line and the mid-range and at the rim, no matter where he's out on the floor, when he catches that ball, he's going to demand attention from the defense. And so they're going to close out hard to him. And when they do, he's simply just able to walk pretty much, right? Because of his long strides. That first stride gets his defender on the back hip. The second step seals off the defender. Now, because you attacked out so hard, because you're playing so far up on him, and because he's just longer than you, he's beat you to the rim. It's an easy bucket. It's a finger roll. It's over. Right? So playing off the catch is fantastic for him. That soft touch at the rim floater is a wrinkle that allows him to force the defender to be wrong. Because with the strength that he has and his ability to initiate that bump contact around the restricted area to get an easy layup, you're going to want to gear up for him to just be bruising into you. But he can also just pull up the little floater up there and away you go. So he can he can put himself in an ability to score in so many different ways. And then you see just his rise up jumper in the mid range in isolation, which is so dangerous because, again, you're going to want to be playing back a little bit to not get blown by. You're going to have to be closing out on threes. And then you're kind of in this no man's land in the mid range. So when you look at his shot chart, he shot over 70% from three. I'm sorry, 70% from the floor. All of his makes came from the nail, the paint, 3-point line. That's where all his makes came from. He worked in that area, and it worked all night long. Because when he's on the floor as the lead creator, he's able to navigate the pick and roll so well that it almost ensures that he'll get a switch onto a smaller guard and just be able to rise up over them and just shoot over the top of them, which is where he gets a lot of his buckets. Whenever he's in charge of the of the action here at the end of the beginning of the second quarter, beginning of the fourth quarter, and in those moments. But his elite ability to flip a switch is something that we rarely see. Because so often, whether it be by player choice or coach choice, so often these players get put into a box of like, this is your role. This is who you are. You don't deviate from that. You just do this thing. With J-Dub, watch when the ball's tipped against Minnesota. When the ball's tipped and he's playing with the starters, he is one of the best off-ball weapons offensively that the league has. Because he's so smart at relocation and taking advantage of how the defense reacts to the Thunder's initial action. So maybe it's a pick and roll action with Chet and SGA on the opposite slot than where J-Dub's at. He can watch and see who's rotating to help, who's crashing down, who's hedging on the screen, and he can take all of that in a split second and understand where he needs to go next to be wide open. And then you see the defense might stop that initial action, but now you've paid so much attention to gear up for that you've missed J-Dub cutting to the rim, that you've missed J-Dub popping out to the corner three, that you've missed J-Dub, right, flaring into the elbow. Like you've missed all that. And he's wide open, and he's going to capitalize on it. So he can go from being this savant off-ball player to being a creator on ball in the blink of an eye, in the sound of a buzzer. Like that is really impressive, and that is incredibly hard to do. That is not something that most people can do. But how about Cason Wallace? Cason Wallace hits that dagger three, and that's that dog mentality stuff that we've been hearing from Cason. We've been hearing from everyone around him from the pre-draft process. That dagger three was huge. Goes 6 for 7 from the floor overall, so does not miss one of any of his two shots inside. Goes 4 for 5 from three. He nailed a couple of corner threes early. He hit a transition three. These all kind of bubble up and build to huge shifters for Oklahoma City. And then you just saw how he played off of the starters so well. Like the gravity that the starters need and the gravity that the starters demand, he played off of that extremely well in the corner. 4 rebounds for Cason Wallace, an assist, a steal, a block, and 16 points. He looks like a high-level NBA starter whenever he has to swing start for OKC because J-Dub got hurt, Shai got hurt, Lou got hurt in this game. I mean, I'm sorry, not hurt, but Lou's sick in this game. And I think it's so impressive because it's twofold. The first one, just like a little anecdotal note, Cason Wallace specifically, the last home game at shoot-around, talked about how important routines are and how important the game day routine is. And the Thunder's initial injury report had 0 injuries, fully healthy. Then, in the middle of the afternoon, Lou Dort's questionable with an illness. He tried it out pregame, I guess, or whatever, however that worked. He tried it out. It wasn't going to go. Somehow found out within that day on Thursday that Lou Dort can't go. That's not a lot of lead time to figure out you're going to be starting an NBA game. And starting an NBA game where there's some pressure. You lost 2 in a row. You don't want to lose 3 in a row for the first time all season. And then if you did lose 3 in a row, you're heading to Minnesota. There's a lot of pressure on this game. So this felt like a different game. It's the altitude. It's the rabid Jazz fans. And yet, Cason Wallace was just ready for the call and was just ready for his opportunity. And he made the most of it. He knocked down some very big shots, including that late 3. And then the second thing is how consistent Cason Wallace has been to where, people always talk about old football coaches of like, if you look at the old football coaches, you never really know if their team was winning or losing or if it was a good play or bad play because they're just so stoic. If you watch Cason Wallace play basketball, You never really know if he's shooting 85% from three, like he did, the first 2 months of the season, or the first month of the season, or if he's shooting 30% from three, as he did in December, because he's going to confidently take his open shot. He's not going to be hesitant. He's going to make good decisions. He's not going to force anything. He's not going to be trying to get it all back in one shot. He's rarely going to express frustration. He might clap after a missed shot or something, but if you're not watching him specifically, you're not going to really notice that, right? So for all you know, Cason is still shooting 80% from three. And even after that 30% dip in December, he's still shooting 41% from three. So this is not about his shot. It's about how engaged he can stay at making winning impacts defensively and making winning impact offensively, even while he shot 30% during the best stretch of the Thunder season. December obviously was their best stretch so far. Not that they've had a bad stretch, but December was fantastic for them. They had a lot of big wins, they had a lot of big games. Cason played in all of them. Cason played rotational minutes in all of them. Cason was a big part of all of them, but yet he only shot 30% from three. But he does not allow that to affect anything else. He doesn't allow that to affect his jumper. He doesn't allow that to affect how he plays defensively and how engaged he is on that end of the floor. And eventually it swings back around to where, because he kept in that same mold of, I'm going to take my open shots confidently, just going to let them fly, and then I'm going to play good defense, it eventually swings to a 4-for-5 game from three. And a game where Cason Wallace was one of the biggest factors in getting this win. So I think that there's a lot of credit for what he is as a rookie. It's a very unique ability as a rookie to be able to kind of do that in a game. We'll talk about Josh Giddey, Chet Holmgren, SGA, and more coming up. But first, I want to say right now about our good friends over at PrizePicks. Check it out today at prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA, or use code all lowercase LockedOnNBA. It's available in Oklahoma. It's fantastic. It's a lot of fun. What you do is you pick a minimum of two players. You can pick up to like 6, 7. You can pick as many as you want to, but a minimum of two players, and you can craft this entry against the PrizePick projections. That's what I love. I love the fact that it's simply only against the PrizePick projections. You're not playing some daily fantasy professional that does this for a living and knows way more of how fantasy works than you. It's just, hey, do you think SGA will score more or less than 30.5 points against Utah, or 25.5 points against Minnesota? Do you think that Chet Holmgren will have more or less than a block and a half against Minnesota, right? Like, you're picking those things on PrizePicks. And what's so fun is Saturday, the Thunder and Timberwolves play. There's also an NFL playoff game on. You can mix and match that entry to where you pick some Thunder players, but then you go pick, some NFL players in that playoff game. And you can watch them side by side, multiple screens. Everyone has them these days. You can go check it out, PrizePicks, and have a lot of fun monitoring those things. So make sure you check it out. And you can even go, and if you're worried because, hey, I only like the NBA, that's all I want to do is look at the NBA PrizePicks offerings. But in the NBA, as we saw with Lou Dort, what if I put Lou Dort on my entry at 9 a.m. because the injury report was clean, and then I don't check it until the game tips off, and I realize, oh wait, Lou's not playing today. He's sick. Guess what? PrizePicks offers you a reboot policy. It's the only daily fantasy platform that has an injury protection insurance policy. So go check it out today at prizepicks.com. And whenever you do, use code LOCKEDONNBA, all lowercase, for a first deposit match up to $100. Check it out today at prizepicks.com. We're back on the Locked On Thunder podcast, on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you so much for making us your first listen every single morning, every single day. We're here for you, talking Thunder basketball. Josh Giddey looked much better. I mean, he had the Euro step finish. He had the tough and one. He had just better overall rim finishes. He had the mid-range shot at the nail, which was huge to beat the zone defense at times. That was a big shot for him. And it just continues to look like what I've said of, you're gonna want Josh Giddey to get better at scoring inside the arc. That's gonna really be the swing for him, because he's just not going to shoot enough three-pointers to where it even matters to adjust to him on the perimeter. And that's not his fault. It's just not going to be his style of play. And that's not going to be how the Thunder play. The Thunder are not going to feed him 10 three-pointers a game. And if they did feed him 10 three-pointers a game, he wouldn't be shooting 40%. So it's kind of like the chicken or the egg argument. So for Josh Giddey, where you see him improve, like you saw the triple-double against Portland, you saw this game against Utah. When he's played some of these top games of his season, he's been doing damage at the rim. He's been doing damage inside the arc. And that's where you're going to want to see him thrive. That's where he thrived in FIBA. He can do it And when he does, it's going to really unlock things for him. And he's done it in recent vintages of this season. 10 rebounds, 9 of them defensively. That's what you're looking for, is that the Thunder came into this game understanding, hey, one of the worst rebounding teams is OKC. One of the best is Utah. It's going to take an all-out effort. It's going to take an all-out, kind of just physicality game from this team. And Kenrich stepped up. Josh Giddey stepped up. All these players stepped up to allow them to even up the glass at 38 apiece. 6 assists, a steal, 20 points. He had much better body control at the rim, really good decision-making with the ball, and not ending plays too early. And like what I mean by that is there are times where, early on whenever he was struggling, he'd pick up his dribble way too soon and there's nowhere to go, and he just kind of froze everything, right? Or he'd get the ball swung to him and he's open for 3, but he doesn't know if he wants to shoot it. Does he want to try to drive? Does he want to try to pass and keep the ball moving? And so it results in just kind of this stall out for a split 1-2 seconds. But that's all the defense needs to get back aligned and take away an advantage. And so he's doing a much better job of just playing his role, right? Just doing what he has to do, being relaxed. And he's doing that a lot better, and he's playing a lot better. And then I just can't, preach enough about how his defense has come a long way as a team defender. The way that he positions himself is the biggest thing. It led to his steal, right? He's positioning himself with his back to the baseline to where he can see everything in front of him, and he can anticipate the entry pass to the post, got the steal, got the transition points, and the Thunder were able to capitalize on that. And that was just a simple fix, and that was just a simple, not only positional fix, but also just being engaged and being more active on the defensive end, not being as laxed. But it's really shown in the last 2 weeks how much better he's gotten on defensively. Again, with a qualifier of he's not going to be a good point of attack defender, but if you look around the NBA, a lot of guys are not great point of attack defenders that are really good basketball players. Like, that's not going to be the standard. That's why guys like Lou Dort, guys like Cason Wallace, those guys kind of stand out a lot. It's because in the modern NBA, it's incredibly tough to be a point of attack defender. But Josh Giddey is not as bad of a defender as he showed at the beginning of the season. He can be a really good team defender, and I think that he will do that as the season goes on, because he's done it over the last 2 weeks. He's done it at a much, much better job. Chet Holmgren, even in an offensive slump, he had game-changing plays. He had the block of Walker Kessler. He had the denial just swallowed up. I believe it was Colin Sexton's shot at the rim, and then he had the game-saving block to end the game on Lauri Markkanen. And yes, his offense was struggling, 6 for 16. And I think that at times he was actually a little too unselfish. Like, there was times later in that game after those misses started to mount up where he'd rise up in the middle of the paint. Could have been an easy, no one around him, mid-range shot, but tried to dump it off, and that was a turnover because I think it was Cason that he kind of hit in the ankles with a pass on a play where he probably should have just shot it. There were some open threes where he kind of passed it up. There was a chance where he had an open three, fly by, dribbled in. That's open as well in the mid-range, and he still kind of passed it. I think that it was just a little too unselfish, and I think that was more so like getting lost in the way the Thunder play of the assists were working, being unselfish was working, finding the cutters was working, and so you got lost in just doing it over and over and over again. When at times, it's okay to also shoot the ball. I think that the offensive slump, 2 for 6 from 3, that never took him out of his game. He had 5 assists, he had 5 rebounds, he had 4 blocks, right? That never took him out of what he did defensively. It goes back to what we said about Cason. These two rookies, very unique. And I think that with Cason, it's obvious. With Chet Holmgren, his snap and clear next play mentality is on display every night. I mean, he got rejected by Walker Kessler. He got scored on at the rim. Doesn't matter. Just comes back down, next play, blocks Kessler. Blocks that Kessler dunk attempt. Like, he just plays the next play. And it's funny because, when you hear him talk and the way that he addresses questions, people always make the comment of oh, he sounds like a Sam Presti robot. He sounds like what the Thunder want him to say. I think that's just who he is. It just is a perfect marriage of what the Thunder look for and what he does. But his ability to separate each side of the floor is fantastic, because you've seen other big men. You've seen big men not as talented as Chet Holmgren, where if they're not getting the ball enough offensively, if they're not getting their points enough offensively, it hurts their defense, right? Or if they're struggling offensively, they're loafing on defense. His ability to just completely separate church and state in that way is why he's able to still have a game-winning play in a night where, as a big man, he shot 6 for 16. I think that was awesome for him. SGA with a ho-hum 30-point efficient night. All I'll say is this: 53% from the floor, 6 rebounds, 6 assists, a steal, a massive block down the stretch whenever OKC had to get a stop. He had 31 points. He just kills you in the mid-range. He had the and ones. He's a driving force downhill, and it led to 17 free throws. And he can pick apart any defensive look. All that stuff we know. You look up at the end of the game, and he somehow has 31 points on 53% from the floor, and you look at that box score in Oklahoma City as you watch him every single game of his career, and you just go, okay, pretty cool. Like, that would be fantastic for any player in the NBA. But with SGA, it's just kind of like expected, kind of like normal, kind of like almost like when you're watching it, you're just like, SGA, weird game from him, right? He shot 53% from the floor. Like this is a fantastic game by NBA standards. I think that the biggest takeaway from this game for him is that you just should never trap SGA. And there's a difference between trapping and double teaming. Double teaming is different, but it's that when you come across the timeline, you're at the top of the key, and then your defender's in front of you, and then the late one's going to just kind of show on you, just scramble out to you, put his hands up and try to trap you at the top of the key. Not commit to double teaming you, but just try to trap and see what you'll do. That's a not smart decision by oppositions, because he can use that crossover to split the defense. He can use his passing ability to take advantage of now playing 4-on-5. And then he can also just stay calm. Like, the whole point of trapping is like that you hope that whoever you trap with the ball is going to panic and make a bad read, make a bad pass. You can get a turnover, and it's a fantastic defensive stop. That's not going to happen with SGA. He's going to either split the trap with his ball handling, make the right pass, with his playmaking, or find a way to pull it out and just reset. And you can't, if he pulls it out of that trap and kind of walks back toward the timeline, now you've really got to get back onto your original man, because now they're playing half court offense in the 5-on-4. So I don't think that like trapping is just a very smart thing. And he made the Jazz pay multiple times for trapping him. Kenrich Williams, he looked back in this game. He might have been a step slower too over the last 2 weeks, but like, he was fantastic. He was physical and aggressive on the glass. He had a ton of tough rim finishes. He only had 4 rebounds, but he made a much bigger impact than that on the glass with his ability to box out and put a body on people. 9 points, 2 assists, a steal, and 17 minutes of really high level of defense, switching and playing really well on that end of the floor. Vasa, he is figuring things out. Now, there's a glaring flaw with Vasa that we're going to talk about, but he uses that pass fake to set up his drives so well. He had a nice transition bucket where he outraced the defense to the rim, got an and one. Right? He was able to drive in the paint, and his ability to drive and survey the floor at the same time is at a high level, is what we saw in EuroLeague. He drives in the paint. He rises up as if he's going to take this kind of floater at the opposite low block. But as he rises up, he just tosses the ball over the top of the defense, the opposite dunker spot where Wiggins is there to finish the job for an easy bucket behind the defense. That is just so creative, and that is just so impressive to be able to keep an offense connected that way. The thing he has to learn, though, is like, this is like the glaring flaw of him for this week. This week he's played some really good basketball. The only issue has been against LeBron, and then again in this game against Utah. He's got to realize that like there's just certain transitional opportunities that you can't do anything about. Like, you just at some point have to wave the white flag and say, look, go score. Because when you go and LeBron's in transition and you go touch his elbow, you're not going to alter his shot. LeBron James is going to make that 100 times out of 100. So now all you've done is give him an additional point for the N1. Happened with Okai Agbaji as well. You've got to learn that if you're going to foul, you've got to really commit to fouling. You've got to ensure that you're in the proper position to foul and ensure that you're going to stop that initial bucket. Because this week now twice, 2 weak fouls have led to and ones that were just needless. You could have just not giving up the additional points. It doesn't really matter, in those two games specifically, but like in a closer game, those things come back to bite you. And those are just little things that I think that Vasilije will continue to learn and continue to adapt to, continue to grow to. 6 points and some nice passing for him in this game. Vasilije is really figuring it out at the NBA level. And I think that, as we mentioned, whenever he signed, this stretch will be where he becomes a mainstay in the rotation. I expect him to play again against Minnesota and play really well. He's playing at that level where you want him in the rotation, and the Thunder are going to keep him there, I believe. So we'll see what that looks like. We're going to be back to recap the game against Minnesota, and Monday, we're going to be grading your fake trades. So make sure you get your fake trades in on Twitter at Rylan_Styles and on YouTube comment section down below. So check it out today. Subscribe to Locked On Thunder anywhere you get your podcast from, including on YouTube. And until tomorrow, be good and be good to one another.